Hello, my name is Aria McCart, and I'm here to talk to you about the tip, tax, and total assignment from Chapter 3 of Starting Out with Visual C# 4th Edition by Tony Gaddis. In my last video, I showed the successor of this assignment by simply demonstrating the works of the application. I lightly reviewed the code in the last video, Stadium Seating Assignment C#. In this video, we're going to review the code a little further and to discuss a little bit of how it does what it does. As we go into this code, you may notice what is called a try-catch statement. What this does is ensure that if the code in the try portion of the button click event, in other words, an event that happens when a button is selected, doesn't work, that your application doesn't crash completely. The catch portion of the button click event provides an exception in the event of invalid data, syntax errors, etc. For example, I'll enter some invalid data into my running application and see what happens. I entered in OK, and a little message box popped up showing invalid input. If we didn't have that exception in place, the program would crash with what I believe is referred to as an unhandled exception error, in which an exception is not present, so the program cannot go forward, resulting in a crash. One of my teachers pointed out in one of his lectures that every good programmer will have a try-catch statement, so as not to build an application easily susceptible to crashing. Now let's see what happens when I enter in a legitimate meal cost into the meal cost text box. Say I went out to eat with a friend at Olive Garden. That sounds really good, by the way. And my meal cost before taxes or tips is $40.19. I'd like to know what my total cost will be based on the standard tip rate, 15%, and example tax rate, 7%. Here it shows that my tip rate would be $6.03 and that my tax rate would be $2.81 for a total cost of $49.03. Let's check to see if this is correct by pulling up my calculator. First, I'm going to calculate $40.19 times 0.15 for the tip amount. Moving the decimal 2 places to the left is how to correctly calculate percentage for reference. I got 6.0285 as a result. Since my application is limited to 2 decimal places, it has been appropriately rounded to $6.03. Next, I'm going to calculate and make sure that my tax amount is correct as it shows in my application. So I'll enter $40.19 times 0.07. Here it shows 2.8133. As with the last amount, it has been rounded appropriately to 281. No logic errors thus far. Now let's calculate those amounts to show the total and check against the application to ensure a match. $49.03 shows as my total cost both on the calculator and in my application. This makes for no known logic errors. Going back into my code I showed you earlier, let's go ahead and exit these out. I'll discuss what exactly is in the try statement. What is shown here are variables used within the button click event handler: meal cost, tip, tax, and total, to be used during the click event to make the application more efficient, if I recall its purpose correctly, that is. Also, because some formats cannot be accepted in the calculations, whereas variables are acceptable. Notice that the tip and tax variables have a green squiggly under them. That means they are declared but never used. This isn't a big deal to where it would cause an error in your application. C# is trying to give you a heads up, letting you know that if you planned on using the declared variable, that it hasn't been used yet. Notice that these 4 declared variables have a comment off to the side of them, stating their purpose. Now, I'm still learning the code as I'm currently enrolled in college for a computer science major. However, it's been made aware to myself, amongst others, that the best ways to retain knowledge is to either implement it often, teach it, or both. Since I have nothing to implement these skills to yet, I figure I'll make videos as a guide to students such as myself or other beginning programmers or coders. Back to the application. Notice this line of code here, meal cost equals double parse food text box am.text. This tells C# that meal cost is any invalid input placed into the text box. Parse tells the application to accept input from an array of number types, such as negative numbers, decimals, etc. Anything outside of these parameters will throw the catch statement, invalid input. This next part is going to get complicated for those who may have a hard time understanding this kind of content, such as myself. I have a super hard time understanding programming, but I learn a little different from the typical tech guru. Under the calculate tip amount comment, refer to the line of code tip label am.text equals meal cost times 0.15.toString quote see quote. This takes the meal cost, aka the number input from the user, and multiplies it by 0.15, which is our designated tip amount. Notice that we're taking the tip amount declared above and applying it to the calculation. Once the calculation is completed, the result can be outputted to the tip label control directly underneath the text box in which our input lies. However, without using the toString method, which converts the mathematical result to text, the output cannot be displayed correctly. If an attempt to display the result without toString is made, C# will throw a syntax error and instruct you to correct it before making the next attempt to run the application. Calculating tax goes the same way. A few differences, however, are the number being calculated with the variable meal cost, as well as the label control having a different name. The name change is necessary unless your goal is to throw another syntax error. Plus, having noticeably different names makes coding easier in my experience. The total is calculated a little differently. I originally declared the tip and tax variables to be used during the calculations here, and here. That didn't work out the way I was anticipating it to, though. Instead, I calculated the total using the original mathematical calculations from the other 3 lines of code before it. This resulted in the code total equals meal cost plus meal cost by 0.15 plus meal cost by 0.07. This will calculate the total, but will not display it yet. You will need the code calculation label am.text equals total.toString quote see quote to display the total. Otherwise, the mathematical results will stay hidden behind the scenes. In case you're wondering, the C in quotation marks simply stands for currency, specifying that the display be in currency format, as you saw earlier in the running application. We pretty much already went over what the purpose of a catch is in a try-catch statement. The messagebox.show method was chosen, along with the message of invalid input, as the exception to the try statement in the click event handler. Instead of putting a clear button like I did in the application of my last video, I decided to do an exit button and leave it at that. The exit button is super simple. Double-click the button in the designer window. That's how you program the other buttons as well, just for reference. And type this.close, open parenthesis, close parenthesis, semicolon, inside the curly braces, and you're done. That was it for the coding aspect of the application. Of course, there's a lot more to learn than that about coding. This is just a basic overview. Thank you for watching my video. If you would like more videos like these, please like and subscribe to my channel.